This presentation was originally going to be about the effect and perspective of service music when comparing a traditional Christian denomination to a more Protestant one. You know, like the structured timeless choir of a Catholic church compared to the upbeat Christian pop you can find in pretty much any non denominational church. Of course, that is also including the megachurches that are pretty famous on the internet for being basically glorified concerts.
Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Going to high. Let's go.
And my project did go as planned. I went with my friend to their service at an Anglican church near my college campus. For reference, the Anglican Church is another traditional sect of Christian denomination. It takes the order and tradition of Catholic while still having a little bit more religious freedom. For a brief summary, imagine a Catholic church, but the priests are allowed to be married, they're female clergy, but still having the routine of spoken scripture and hand signs in service that are absent during non denominational service. I had many questions to interview my friend. Like, what do you feel when listening to church music? Does it affect your spirituality or connection to God in any way? Another one was, do you listen to church music or service music on your free time? Or do you listen to Christian pop, which is played in different denominational churches that you don't go to? However, as I have never been to a Catholic or Anglican service before this, excluding the cathedral in Cologne that I visited while backpacking, I did not realize that my questions were pretty basic and almost ignorant. Because once I did experience the service, I pretty much knew the answer to all my questions that I was asking before I asked them. But for people who have not been to these services, I will have my friend sum it up. She said that the music she listens to on her own time is indeed Christian pop, and not the choir or instrumental music played in service, because while the choir and classical instruments are important for the service, they are meant for the collective. They are meant for the environment of worshiping God in the community, not alone. The Christian pop is just something she would rather listen to day to day as an individual that helps her keep her spirits up and connected to God. I think this would be the case for most people unless they really like choir or classical music, and not necessarily because it would help them with their walk in faith more than the other one would. But now is in a bit of a rough patch. Most of the class did similar services like I did will most likely find the presentation lacking and bland. But honestly, it wouldn't be fun to make a video out of it either. Coincidentally, due to a family emergency, I went back home during Easter Sunday, and I figured since my presentation needs more material, I would go to another Anglican church. This would change my final project entirely, or at least what I wanted to do for it. My class went over their first thoughts and experiences when going to another religion or denomination service or gathering, and many went to a Catholic service for the first time, which most said the same thing. I had a hard time following all the routines. If you're not familiar, the Catholic Church is a routine of all the overall service called the Order of Mass, which has a combination of a time to greet those around you, standing up for the choir, hand signs, multiple scripture readings, and bowing your head to pray. This can be very overwhelming for those new to said service, and while they try to help you with some things like having the scripture displayed overhead for you to read and telling you when to greet those around you, when it comes to hand signs, standing up, or bowing your head, let alone communion, but that's a whole other story, it becomes very easy for you to be out of sync and feel out of place or uncomfortable in the environment. But when I went to this Anglican church, I noticed something different. Every time we did parts of the routine, certain notes would play for each sign. For example, the sign of the cross, right as we were about to do it, they played a D2 plus a G3. Or when we had a scripture to read, they played an E3 with a G2 sharp. Now, to be honest, I did not realize this instantly. It was probably only after the third or fourth time, but once I did, it almost clicked. I was not much later than anyone else in the sanctuary, and it made the message a lot more enjoyable because I was not so worried about what came next, or if I was going to be late. I even have a little key that I wrote down for the service, so it was a lot easier for me to wrap my head around. Also, disclaimer, I did not write this down during service. I have almost no experience with music, and I just spent a few extra hours trying to find the notes that were similar to the ones I heard. I can almost guarantee that they're probably not the exact notes they played, but they sound similar at least, so you can get the gist. The sign of the cross was D2 and G3. Prayer was F3 with C sharp 3. Any scripture reading was E3 with G sharp 2. And standing up to the start of the choir was A3 and B. And this was so interesting and fun to learn because it really matched with the service and it made it really feel like it was a place of order and holiness. I was way more attentive than I was for even my own regular church service, and it makes me want to go back. Now, unfortunately, I do not think this is a standard practice among all Anglican churches, let alone Catholic churches. I went back to the original service near my campus, and they did not do the same notes. They did not play a lot of notes for the routines at all, unfortunately. But I think we could be onto something here. Imagine people new to these services and practices didn't experience such discomfort. They'd be able to focus more on the service and enjoy it like I did, since they can always be ready for what comes next and pay attention to the message. My experience going to these services made me really think about the place music serves in religion, because when music is present, it makes the service feel more whole, and if it is not, it almost feels like something is missing. The lack of it being there can draw my attention pretty much more than anything else, and in this context, I think it might be because we humans love order. From routines to weekly gym workout plans, we love structure. Music fills that desire, and the only time I think it doesn't is when the point is not to have music, to have only silence, like a temple. If you try to understand something more, you appreciate it more. This final project, while probably not being as professional as it should have been, it really made me stop and think about music's place in spirituality and religion. And while I could go on about it, how it changed my perspective of my own church service and how I even see music in my own spiritual journey, this video is already taking me about 30 to 40 hours from writing the script, recording, drawing for the first time, let alone on mouse with MS Paint, and then editing to put it all together. So I'll spare the TED Talk and just tell you to try to pay a little bit more attention to what you're listening to. It may open your eyes a little bit, or your ears at least, and it may even help you stay awake every Sunday. But Andrew, you barely really went into depth about. Yeah. Alright, look. I was told to observe and describe my experience in an unknown religion service, then give a final project discussing what stuck with me and what connections I made with the music and the different environment I was in. And I did just that. With more than enough elbow grease, I would say. If I didn't already change majors from aerospace to statistics, I would have failed my classes for sure from doing all this. So, I think I did pretty good. Little side note, earning credit here. So, as you can tell, this is a presentation or a final project I had to do for one of my classes at college. So I thought I may as well kill two birds with one stone and practice editing. So I made a YouTube video. And for those of you in my class, or if I don't really understand how this final project or presentation works,
God forbid, God forbid. Don't talk like that.
to play this video on the main screen in the auditorium. That's the reason I hid our college and the church's names, because I will actually be uploading this and I'd rather not say where I go to school. Also, for the people that read my original essay, like the professor or the TA, they might notice there are some differences in my report. This was because after my first visit to the church near campus, I reported the sound cues. This was because I already wrote half my paper and did not really feel like starting over, so I just wrote it in that the original church was the one making the sound cues to make it easier on myself, but I didn't realize that not all traditional churches have this, since I went back and they didn't have the sound cues. So it didn't really make sense in my final paper, so I'll be fixing it. Just FYI.